The iceberg didn't kill the Titanic. It was a secret that the White Star Line took to the grave. On the night of April 14, 1912, 2,224 people boarded a ship that was called Unsinkable. But within 3 hours, 1,500 souls were lost in the freezing Atlantic. It is the most famous shipwreck in history. But are we telling the truth about what really happened? Welcome back to World with Atta. Today, we aren't just talking about a movie. We are talking about a grave. We are going deep into the wreckage to find the facts they don't teach you in school. From the fatal design flaw to the mystery ship that watched them die, here is the true story of the RMS Titanic. Let's set sail. The year was 1912. The Industrial Revolution was at its peak. The Titanic was built as a monument to human ambition. It cost $7.5 million to build back then, which is about $200 million today. But here is the first fact that gets overlooked. The Titanic was essentially a floating city. It was 882 feet and 9 inches long. To put that in perspective, if you stood it upright on its bow, it would be taller than most skyscrapers of its time. It weighed 46,000 tons. And it took 3,000 men nearly 3 years to build. But here is the dark twist. 8 workers died during construction. Their names aren't on the memorials the way the rich passengers are. But we remember them. Now, we all know the hype. They called it the Ship of Dreams. But let's look at the reality. The Unsinkable label was never official. It was a marketing gimmick by the White Star Line. They wanted you to think that God himself couldn't sink this ship. But God didn't sink it. Arrogance did. Here is the second fact. The Titanic wasn't built with one single hull. It had a double bottom. But the sides were only a single steel plate thickness. The design was meant to save money. But they also made the steel brittle. Yes, you heard me. The steel was low in sulfur, but it also had high phosphorus. When the iceberg scraped the hull, it didn't tear a massive hole. It actually just popped the rivets. The rivets popped like buttons on a shirt. The water rushed in through tiny seams, not one giant gash, but a series of cracks along 300 feet of the ship. Now look at this. They had watertight compartments. That sounds safe, right? But here is the flaw that kills me. The bulkheads didn't go all the way up to the deck. They called them watertight, but the top was open. When the bow dipped down, the water spilled over the top of the bulkhead into the next compartment like water overflowing a cup. Once 5 compartments were flooded, it was game over. There was no way to pump the water out fast enough. The night was clear, unusually clear. There was a dead calm. But there was also no moon. This made it impossible to see a black berg, an iceberg with no white caps. Here is the terrifying truth: the Titanic received 6 warnings about icebergs that day. The last one came from the Californian at 10:30 p.m. The wireless operator, Jack Phillips, was so busy sending passenger messages that he snapped back. "Shut up, shut up. I am busy." He literally told the lookout ship to shut up. 10 minutes later, the Californian turned off their wireless and went to bed. Here is the third fact. The lookouts, Fleet and Lee, didn't have binoculars. They were locked in a locker, and the key was missing. They had to rely on their eyes alone. At 11:40 p.m., Fleet saw a shape in the dark. He rang the bell 3 times and yelled, "Iceberg right ahead." First Officer Murdoch tried to port around it. But it was too late. The iceberg was just as big as the ship. This is the most heartbreaking part of the story. and this is where the class system really shows its ugly side. The Titanic had 20 lifeboats. Enough for 1,178 people. But there were 2,224 on board. They didn't have enough boats because someone thought it would look cluttered on the deck. But here is the scandal. Lifeboat number 1 was launched with only 12 people on it. It could hold 40. In fact, most lifeboats left half empty because the crew didn't believe the ship was sinking, and the rich didn't want to leave the safe ship. A rule existed. Women and children first. But if you were a third-class passenger, you were locked below decks. The gates were closed. The survivors from third class, only 25% made it. First class, over 60% survived. One of the richest men on board, John Jacob Astor, died. He put his pregnant wife on a boat and stepped back. He was last seen smoking a cigarette on the deck, knowing he was doomed. At 2:10 a.m., the ship finally snapped. It didn't sink like in the 1997 movie where it goes down in one piece. The physics tell us it broke in two right on the surface. The bow section detached and plummeted to the ocean floor at 30 miles per hour. The stern section, however, crashed down and spiraled like a corkscrew. Hundreds of people were left in the water. The water was 28 degrees Fahrenheit, well below freezing. Most died within 15 minutes, not from drowning, but from cardiac arrest caused by the cold shock. The Carpathia arrived at 4 a.m. They saw a sea full of bodies but only picked up 706 survivors. The rest, 1,517, were left to the sea. The aftermath was brutal. The rules of the sea changed forever. A Titanic effect was born. All ships now have to have enough lifeboats for everyone on board. And they have to run 24-hour wireless operations. The wreck was discovered in 1985 by Robert Ballard. And it is slowly being eaten by a rust-eating bacterium called Halomonas titanici. Experts say that in the next 20 years, the Titanic will be completely gone, just a rust stain on the ocean floor. But the biggest mystery, the Californian was 10 miles away. They saw the flares. They saw the distress signals. But the captain thought they were company rockets. He did nothing. The ship just drifted by, leaving the Titanic to die in the dark. The Titanic isn't just a story about a boat. It's a warning about human pride. It tells us that nature is the one thing we cannot conquer, no matter how much steel we put on the ocean. It reminds us that in the end, we are all passengers on a ship we can't fully control. What do you think, world with Atta family? Were the crew negligent, or was it just a perfect storm of bad luck? Let me know in the comments below. If you made it to the end of the video, I want you to comment sinking so I know you are a real O.